So take your notes, stay tuned, and soak up this big tech energy.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jarrett Albritton with the Big Tech Energy Podcast, where we focus and highlight on Black excellence in tech. And I got a really, really dope guest representing Techstars in the building today, my man Tre, and I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Tre, thanks for being here.
Appreciate you having me, man. You gave me a good excuse to get down to Florida, Miami/Fort Lauderdale.
I know, that's why I love this location.
Yeah, it's dope, man. I needed a beach in my life, so this is good.
Facts.
Good timing. But yes, as you said, I'm Tre Baker, Managing Director of Building Tulsa Techstars Accelerator, also author of In the Black 2050, a blueprint for Black economic leadership in the 21st century. I've been a serial entrepreneur since I was 19 and made the transition into full-time investing last year. So this is my first year as quote-unquote professional VC.
Yeah.
But I've been angel investing since 2014. So, yeah, that's who I am.
Awesome. So, I mean, I obviously know what Techstars is. Anybody in the startup VC space knows who Techstars is. But for those that are not familiar with Techstars, how would you describe the organization?
Yeah, it's a global accelerator platform. So we have 50 programs around the world focused on accelerating pre-seed stage companies. We're global. We just launched our first program in Africa this year. In sub-Saharan Africa, so we're in Lagos now, and the Tulsa program is one of the newest programs as well. So we've got I think around 40 MDs. Some cities have multiple programs. We are one of the top tier accelerators in the world, and as of I think last week, we are now the most prolific pre-seed stage investor in the world. So we make the most pre-seed stage investments out of all VC shops, all investment firms in the world. And that goes, right now I think we're going back and forth with Y Combinator, but pretty soon I think we'll be solidly in the lead.
Gotcha.
We write a lot of checks. So I think this year we'll do about 800 investments.
Nice.
A lot of people don't realize that scale. Even I didn't when I joined. I didn't realize how many checks we were writing every year.
Gotcha. And then when it comes to the companies that you tend to look at and you tend to work with, what is that like, or who are those type of companies?
Yeah. So it's different for each program within Techstars. We have some vertically focused, industry-focused ones, some industry agnostic. My program is agnostic but focused on underrepresented founders. So I do not have a particular focus on industry. Obviously, underrepresented founders is kind of a broad term, but we focus a lot on Black and brown and women founders. I have my preferences on the kind of industries that interest me, but I try to keep an open mind when I'm doing screening. But my personal interests are around, the metaverse, blockchain, Web3, ag tech. So I'm a third generation farmer. So I've got an affinity for the land, and nobody's interested in farming like my grandfather did. There's technology now, right? And I'm interested in solving big problems with technology, and everybody's got to eat every day. So agriculture is a big one, and then proptech. So there's a housing shortage basically all over America, and every time I see a house being built the way it's been built for the past 100 years, or housing markets operating inefficiently or not changing because not keeping up with technological changes, I get annoyed. And so PropTech is kind of one of my passion projects. I've got a whole investment thesis around housing as a service and the future of housing, and a whole other portfolio around prefab and 3D printed houses and stuff like that. So yeah, blockchain, ag tech, PropTech, construction, those are some of my pet areas that I like, but right. I keep an open mind. So we've got some healthcare companies, we got e-commerce, fintech, ed tech that have come through the program.
If you're solving a problem that is relevant, you do it uniquely, and it can show potential for ROI, then it's open.
Yeah,
open
and I have
business.
a bias towards really big important problems too. So I don't do much in. I've kind of recently in the past stayed away from gaming and things that are not quote unquote necessary. But now that I have a different view on the metaverse and another thesis around the metaverse, I see how important gaming is to bringing that about. So now I do have gaming thesis, but it's not around games themselves. It's about the infrastructure.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I have a bias towards things that like problems that really need solving, and I really don't enjoy unnecessary human suffering. So I like things that can solve those things.
Nah, that's real. That's real. So, I obviously could talk more about Techstars, but I'd like to know more about you and, your story and how you got to a place where you're a managing director of Techstars and, like, what motivates you and, what drives you in this position beyond, funding startups and making money. And I know there's a lot, so I'm kind of setting you up for that. But, when it comes to, like, your journey in tech, or as a startup founder or investor, whatever the case is, love for you to kind of walk through where you started and how you ended up, where you are today.
Yeah. So
you can give the Cliff Notes version if you want to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And skip some
how
parts.
long we got?
Yeah. So you can just kind of keep it high level.
So the thing that'll tie it all together, well, kind of, I bounced around a lot, is a passion for Black economic development. So I've been building my experience and my skill set to be best suited to add value when it comes to creating collective Black wealth and how to allocate those resources. So earliest start off, I was one of those kids. This is a surprisingly common thing in startups and founders. I was one of those kids who sold candy in middle school. Like it was basically the first time my parents told me I couldn't have something because of money, right? So I was like, I'm going to have to go get my own money. So middle school, selling candy. Fast forward to college, I was good at math and science, but actually I wanted to get into fashion design. So in high school, I was like designing my own jeans. I took home ec to a whole different level. Like when they taught me how to sew, I was designing shoes, got into fashion, but I was good at math and science. So ended up going to engineering. I let people convince me to go to engineering school. First semester in, I was like, yeah, I definitely don't want to be an engineer, but I stuck with it, got the degree, immediately went to business school afterwards, never practiced engineering. So got my MBA, graduated in 2008 in the middle of the Great Recession. Luckily, I landed a job like 2 weeks before graduation, so I worked at GE Energy in Atlanta in renewables, so commercializing wind and solar. Now, what they didn't tell me when I started was that although GE Energy's headquarters is in Atlanta, the renewables division was in Schenectady. So they wanted me to move to Schenectady, which I did for a little bit, and I was like, yeah, I'm going back to Atlanta. They were like, that's not an option. And I was like, but I'm going. And they were like, well, do you want the job? And I was like, I guess not. So that was the end of that. I wanted to get back down south. 2 years in Boston for grad school was enough. So that was around 2010. I started doing some consulting this whole time. So I started my first business when I was 19, like real one, not selling candy. Was doing custom T-shirts. Ended up getting into e-commerce. So that's running this whole time. So that's how I wasn't too worried about quitting my job. I did have other stuff on the side and income.
Right.
And then I would do consulting projects around business development, financial modeling for small businesses, startups. In 2013, learned about crypto, got into that world, and used the money I made from that to invest in startups. So I made my first startup investment in 2014, got my first exit in 2020, and after that, so 6 years of angel investing. In 2021, I started kicking around the idea of starting a fund, a VC fund. So we launched HBCU Impact Capital. Me and my good friend and frat brother, Isaac Kadai. He was a professor at TSU at the time, Tennessee State, not Texas Southern, and noticed the gap in the tech transfer market in HBCUs. So the plan was to commercialize research coming out of HBCUs. That's still a great opportunity if anybody wants to steal that idea. Go for it. We might, Isaac might end up doing it. I don't know. Anyway, it was a good idea. So that brought me to Tulsa for the first time with the Black Venture Summit. Shout out to Bill in Tulsa. hosted the first Black Venture Summit in Tulsa in 2021. I went there. It was a weekend. Had no intention on ever visiting Tulsa. That event just happened to be there. Definitely had no intention on moving to Tulsa. But by the end of that weekend, I saw tremendous opportunity in that city. So I came back for a visit 2 weeks later. And one of the last conversations I had before getting on the plane was with a guy at a local VC shop there, and he told me that Techstars might be opening an office in Tulsa. So I happened to be at that event, 2 weeks prior at the Black Venture Summit with a representative from Tulsa, but we didn't end up having a conversation. So I reached out to her, said I was interested, and a month later got the position of managing director. And so from November 2021 to December 2021, decided to pivot my entire career path. Well, not entirely, like I was in investing, but pivot how I was going to do it, and had a conversation with my wife about moving from a place we were perfectly happy and settled and love, Atlanta, and going to Tulsa. So by February of 2022, I was in Tulsa. So that's a short. Sometimes I can do that story a little bit shorter, but that's about
that was good. That was a good Cliff Notes version. Yeah. I appreciate that. So I actually met you listening to you at South by Southwest at a Build Tulsa event, and you all talked about the energy in Tulsa, the history of Tulsa, and the opportunity to, like your shirt, rebuild Black Wall Street. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to, obviously it must have had a huge impression on you. What was it about Tulsa that made you say, I'm going to uproot my family, and this is part of the mission that I want to take a part of?
Yeah. So in the book, in the Black 2050, in the intro, I talk about kind of learning the lessons from Black Wall Street, but I never thought I'd actually get a chance to participate, because that story is ongoing, right? So yeah. It's not just history. So being interested in Black economic development, my office is literally 2 blocks from historic Black Wall Street, like Greenwood and Archer. So that was an opportunity that comes along once in a lifetime. Also, the ecosystem is unique in that it's very collaborative and focused. So it's like physically, geographically concentrated and focused, right? So like all the startup activity is basically in the Arts District, which is adjacent to Greenwood. All of it used to be Black Wall Street back in the day. So like there's 3 co-working spaces, all the VCs, they're all in a, call it 5-6 block radius. So that's unique, right? Like you can literally just, if you're trying to pitch VCs, or if you're a startup founder trying to check out the ecosystem, literally you just get off the airplane and go to the Arts District and walk around, and you'll find stuff. But most importantly, it's one of the few ecosystems I've been in that are extremely well resourced and have resources focused specifically on Black founders. There's also an interesting history around Native Americans, and there's a strong tribal presence there that ties in as well. But most people, they'll play the whole underrepresented, minority, diverse game and lump everybody in the same bucket. And Black folks tend to fall to the bottom of that totem pole.
Absolutely.
So it was interesting to see an ecosystem that had a very strong focus on Black founders, and a bunch of money being thrown at it. Tulsa is an oil city, so there's a lot of oil money around. We have a $5 billion family foundation, George Kaiser Family Foundation, that is very intentional about helping to rebuild Black Wall Street. So when you got that kind of financial firepower behind a relatively small ecosystem, small and fast growing, it just presented a very unique opportunity. I feel like I've made more progress in my personal career in the past year than I did in the 5 years prior to that, right? It's like a lot of stuff is happening. I'm in a lot of rooms that, I might not have got in Atlanta. Like to politic and move your way up in a city like Atlanta was much easier. Whereas, now I'm pretty plugged in, and I can get to anybody in Tulsa that I need to. And then there's a lot of energy. I'm a spiritual person, not a religious person, but I do feel like our ancestors are still actively involved in kind of guiding things, and like there's a very real energy like around Black Wall Street that, like, when you get there, you just feel there's like unfinished business there, and it's a stain on every Black person that it's been allowed to fester this long. Like, if we can't rebuild Black Wall Street in like the original Black Wall Street, like I know there's been a bunch of different ones, so like Sweet Auburn in Atlanta, Wilmington, North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, but the biggest one was Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And if we can't rebuild that there, how are we going to replicate that in other markets where we have the unfair advantage of a bunch of money and a very focused collaborative set of people focused specifically on this goal? Like, if we can't do it with all that, then we got to go back to the drawing board. Like, there's something very fundamentally wrong with us as a community if we cannot do this.
Yeah. No, that's some real stuff, man. I appreciate that breakdown. And where do you see Tulsa, heading over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, man, you're asking all my favorite questions, and we barely
didn't even prep. Yeah.
So, personally, I still have my own personal wealth goals, and I'm trying to get to my. Are we allowed to cuss?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get to my fuck it number. So, I went to undergrad in Nashville in the early 2000s, and I saw Nashville go from what it was to what it is now, like a booming, fast-growing metropolis. And I was just there before I came here, speaking at Vandy, and just the number of cranes and new buildings on the skyline just from 3 years ago. Like I was last time I was there was 2019. Is amazing. So there's a lot of growth happening in Nashville, very exciting ecosystem. But I missed that boat in terms of like investing in the local market, especially real estate. Although I did try to convince my frat brothers to buy a frat house back then, and everybody now admits that I was right. But so I missed that train. Similar to like Austin, Texas, you can imagine. Tulsa, I feel like Tulsa is on that same path. It's maybe 10 years behind Nashville, 15 behind Austin, but it's on that path. Like, we still have surface level parking lots in like prime central business district, right? So there's still plenty of real estate opportunity, and I feel like it's kind of, I like to play in emerging markets, so I'm very interested in the Caribbean, very interested in Africa, but I feel like we have a bunch of emerging markets within America that are still relatively untapped. So just like personally, I feel like it's a good place to put down some roots, make some investments, and I feel like it's on that, like, it's definitely on that growth path. And like, unlike other cities where it kind of happened organically or through traditional economic development means, like by attracting like corporations and whatnot, Tulsa's taken a somewhat unique approach, and during the pandemic they actually just started paying people to move to Tulsa.
I saw them do that in South by.
Our problem is not like, strategically it's a good location, like geographically it's good for like logistics, middle of the country, 40 minutes away from the largest inland port in America. Got a lot of cool organizations doing good work, the Family Foundation, but there's like 1,500 other foundations, just a bunch of oil money. The state is investing in innovation and tech, but they just need more talent and more people, so they just started paying people to move there. So when you do that, people move. So now they're experiencing a lot of rapid growth, which is why anybody who's listening to this is a real estate investor or real estate developer. We have a serious housing shortage. You might want to look into Tulsa. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing and why I uprooted my family to get there.
All right, dope. So there's a bunch of money for Black founders in Tulsa.
Yeah.
Much.
Now, let me do a little expectation management.
Of course.
It is, when you show up, nobody's presenting you a check. Like, you still have to go and do the work, meet people, build something worth funding.
Facts.
And, so it's available, it's not free, right?
Right.
So, whereas other places, it's just not available.
Mm-hmm.
But you still got to do the work and still got to have a compelling value proposition.
So that's a good segue into my next question is for the black founders that are out there, because, when it comes to big tech energy, I do talk about how to break into tech in terms of getting tech roles. And I know that's like really popular in terms of podcasts and, TikTok and Instagram influencers. But I really wanted to highlight how black founders can get funding, because that's how we can have real economic shift in terms of big black organizations hiring us, setting up roots in our communities, et cetera, right? Yeah. So it's super important that more black founders get funding, but if they're not approaching it the right way or thinking about the right things, they're going to consistently get denied those checks for those that are talking and doing the right things. So for all the black founders out there that might be hitting roadblocks or, just kind of confused as to why they're not having as much success in terms of acquiring funding from, groups like Techstars and others that are out there, what advice do you have in terms of how they should approach, creating their startup and then pitching their startup when it comes to finding funding?
Well, easier said than done. It's hard. Get really good at prompt engineering and be a ChatGPT super user.
I love that. Yeah.
Prompt engineers will probably be the most important job in the next 2-3 years. But so part of it is structural. There's just not enough money for black founders. So there's a little bit of no matter what you do, there's not enough yet. We've still got to do some work on this at a systemic level on organizing more black LPs. If we don't have enough black investors, and I'm not talking about people who write the checks, I'm talking about the people who write them checks. So I'm still funded by other people, right? So it's not my money I'm investing. So we need more of those people who fund people like me to be black and give us the mandate of go out and fund black founders. And since George Floyd, that's been happening more, but we're still it's still a drop in the bucket. So there's a lack of capital supply issue. So that just makes it a very competitive environment for founders, especially in this market when VC capital is drying up. But that being said, it's still it sounds basic, but it's still fundamental business, right? You've got to create something that the world needs, and solving a problem that is so painful for the market that you're serving that they have to find a solution with or without you. They're doing something about it now. That's something is either inadequate or it doesn't exist. Maybe they've been looking for a solution that doesn't exist. So identifying very real pain points, especially with technical founders, they get into this habit of building things because they can and because it's cool and they have a good idea, versus starting with somebody's pain. You always got to be centered around pain, annoyance, problem that somebody is already actively looking for a solution for, right? Now, there's something to be said about creating things that people don't know they need, like the iPhone, a touchscreen based phone. Nobody knew they needed that until they saw it. So there's still some of that out there. But most of the ideas that I fund and most of the good pitches I see, the founder is very connected to the problem, and that problem is very real for the customers that they're serving. So that's just fundamental. You got to be really connected to the problem, and it has to be a problem worth solving for it to be interesting, because we're seeing dozens, if not hundreds, of pitches, right? So I need a compelling story to even get my attention to focus on it, and that story is usually around solving a compelling problem and giving me example of what a day in the life of the person who is experiencing this problem looks like, and how it affects the world and all that stuff. So fundamentally, solve an important enough problem. Second, founding team is the most important thing that we look at, right? Especially at pre-seed, because there's really no business to fund. We're funding people. So founder problem fit is a very important thing, and I tend to gravitate towards founders who have to solve this problem because they have a personal experience with it. So you hear that a lot in the healthcare industry. It's everybody has a healthcare horror story, and they have a problem they need. They've experienced something that inspired the solution that they're building. But more than just having the idea and the need to solve it, you also need to be able to build a team that's able to execute around that, right? So every VC, the first thing we're going to look at is who the team is and does it make, well, beyond the idea and the market size. So is the market big enough? Like, let's say your projections are 10% right. Like, so you're 90% off and you only get, 10% of the market you were expecting to get. Is that still big enough? Like, is 10% of 10% still $1 billion or whatever?
Yeah.
Is the market big enough that you can be wrong and still make a ton of money? Right? There's one thing that founders that I didn't appreciate because I've been in the game so long, it's kind of like second nature to me, but it's not intuitive. This is specifically for VC investing and angel investing. If I make an investment in a company and they produce a 3x return, for the founder, that sounds great, right? It's like, I tripled your money, you should be happy about that. But when I make an investment in a company, I'm not looking at you to make a good investment on the investment I gave, on the money I gave you, a good return on the money I gave you. I need you to make a return on the money I've given 10 other companies in my portfolio because I know 9 of them are going to fail. So I need you to subsidize the losses of 9 other companies and still get me a 3x return on all of that, right? So I don't need you to make a 3x return. I need you to make a 20, 30, 40x return because you're subsidizing the losses, essentially, right? So I need the market to be big enough to allow that to happen. So where even if you only get 1% of the market or 0.5% of the market, you can still be $1 billion company, right? And that's just VC math. If you don't take VC dollars, your calculation can be different. Or if you're doing like revenue-based financing, that's a different calculation. But I'm talking specifically pitch VC. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking at, will this check return the entire fund? Like if this one thing hits, can it return the entire fund? Now, I kind of don't view it exactly in those same terms. I'm not expecting to take 9 out of 10 losses. I'm thinking I'm gonna do a little bit better than that because I have another strategy around supplying my own demand. So I make investments that help other investments and kind of give myself give the portfolio an unfair advantage. So every single one doesn't have to return the fund. Maybe every 2 or 3 companies does. But anyway, the opportunity needs to be big enough. The founder needs to be connected to the problem or be very connected to the customer, like have a very customer-centric view and be able to build a team around them to plug their gaps. So if you're not a technical founder, you need some technical help somehow. Like you need to figure that out. Now with ChatGPT and ChatGPT being able to write code, I think this is a good time for non-technical founders to be able to level up their skills. But you need to have somebody who can technically build the thing that you're trying to build on the team, and then people who are proficient around go-to-market. So one of the team dynamics I like to see, this is not a rule of thumb. I've invested in plenty that don't fit into this category, but I like obviously multi-time founders, but even first-time founders who are able to attract talent from a more established corporation. So like a bunch of people are getting laid off right now, Google, Twitter, Meta. If you can attract some of that corporate talent to help plug your knowledge gaps, specifically around when it comes to scaling, right? So one thing that I learned about myself is I'm a very good 0 to not even 1, like 0 to a half founder. Like I'm really good at starting something from scratch, getting it to like hiring the first 2 people and getting the initial revenue in the door. And then once it gets past like the first 10, 15 employees, then I lose interest and I move on to the next project, right? That's not the type of founder I want to back, right? Like I need somebody who can go the distance and build that team and then bring people on around them who have seen what it looks like at scale. So somebody who you can get from Twitter or Apple or Facebook or whatever, they've seen what it looks like at scale, and they can maybe point out some landmines that you might avoid. Like, hey, the thing that we're doing now works cool at 20 people, but as soon as we get to 50, there's going to be a problem right here. And first-time founders, especially from my background, I didn't have a bunch of corporate experience. Typically fall into those traps of scaling traps, right? So people who have even either proven that they know how to scale or can build a team that has been around scale, a market that's big enough, and a problem that's important enough. And then, being able to condense your story into a compelling couple minutes, which is why, our demo day pitches are 3 minutes. That's even too long. But we've got your attention because you're at demo day, so we know we've got at least 3 minutes. But if you're pitching me and it takes you more than 60 seconds, my mind has already started to wander.
Yeah.
I'm already thinking about what I'm about to eat, go see my, getting home to see my kid. Like, you got to get very good at talking to people like they have no idea what you do, because most people don't.
Right.
Even if they do technically have the technical experience and knowledge to understand what you're talking about, still dumb it down. Like I said, going through this last application cycle, we had 300 applications. Like, if you're not getting me in the first few slides, I already lost it. Like, in the description. So, like, for these type of customers who have this problem, we are a SaaS platform that does this. I need to get it in that. Right? So you got to get real good at telling the story and making it personal. So if you've got a product demo, that helps. Like, just let me see it. Like, you could try to describe it all day, but let me see it and play around with it. But if you don't have that, tell me a story of how it affects the user, right? Not what it does. Like, what are they using it for? So, what was the example that everybody uses from McDonald's? They don't sell burgers, they sell what? I can't.
Well, I know they own real estate, but I don't know what this is.
It's like, we don't sell burgers, we sell the convenience, or I can't remember what it is. It's probably a bad example, but like, you are not selling somebody a product, you are selling them a solution. So another good example
time-saving solution, maybe, because it's so fast.
Yeah, it's like convenience, something like that. It's like Black & Decker doesn't sell drill bits, they sell holes. Like, I buy the drill bit because I need a hole.
Right.
I don't need the drill bit, I just need the hole. That's the thing that gets me the hole.
Right.
Right. So they're buying a solution to a problem. Get me to there. Get me to understand why they need to do this thing and what it does for the customer, not what you're selling. Like, oh, we're a SaaS platform that helps collate data and create a dashboard. Oh, okay. But why does the customer need that?
Right. What problem does it solve?
Like, I have a problem right now. Ended up using. I have a problem with collecting data from my portfolio companies after I make the investment, right? So I was actively looking for a solution for that, ended up finding one, and using this product now, because I don't really care about what they do or the features. I care about this very specific problem that I need solved, and does it do that for me, right? So just being able to dumb that down and explain it in simple terms, especially the more technical your product, the harder it is to simplify it. But if you can't simplify it, if you can't explain it to somebody who's not familiar with their industry at all, then you got to get better at that.
Yeah.
It's like they say, the best professors are able to simplify things the most, right?
Yeah,
People
dumb it
who
down
have
for like a
mastery
third
of
grader.
something make it seem very simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Membership in Black in HR means community and being a part of a culture of like-minded individuals. You have a culture within a culture, especially in the Black community, and Black in HR is that professional culture. We have fun, we laugh and joke about things that are related to us in the workplace, but we also have serious aspects as well where we help each other grow. And it's just one of those places where I can go to any time of the day, pose a question, and I'm going to get all type of answers, but I'm going to get support.
And we all work together to give advice, to give insight, to share tips. The networking is amazing.
The people that I've spoken to have allowed me to learn things about myself that I didn't know. So what does that do? When I go to my next interview, I have that confidence when I walk in to be able to explain and speak on what I've done in the past and prove that I am the person for the job.
No, I mean, you broke that down, bro. That was some good stuff because I definitely hear a lot of pitches, see a lot of pitches, and they'd be really long, confusing, and talking about stuff that does not matter.
Right.
So I'm glad the people that listen to this, that are putting together the pitch deck, utilizing ChatGPT and other things that you're talking about.
Speaking of, there's a local company that I think is moving to, or one of the Tulsa-based VC shops invested in, called Brevity, BREVITY.com. I'm not invested, but they have a AI-enabled tool to build decks for specific things. So either a sales deck, sales presentation, or demo day, or investor pitch. And they have like a cool tool to structure it for you, and then basically you're just like filling out a form, and it just creates the deck.
Yeah.
So rather than trying to do it from the good decks typically they're structured about the same. You know, they put the team slide earlier versus later. You know, you might move the stuff around, but they have the same like 5-6 elements.
Right.
So tools like that, and then I don't know how to pronounce it. Tome, TOME.ai. It's like an AI-enabled presentation builder. So it's like, build me a presentation about a B2B SaaS product in healthcare space, and it'll just lay out the template for you. And start to fill it in. You just go in and edit. But yeah, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just look at examples of pitch decks from companies that are successful now, or use Brevity, and then just.
Yeah. There's also, I don't know if you heard of presentations.ai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And beautiful.ai as well.
Right.
There's a bunch of presentation softwares. It's almost, if I see a bad, even one that's poorly designed, like, I'm not a stickler for that. Like, it could look ugly. I don't really care. But if it's like super whack, like, you didn't even try. There's so many tools.
Right.
Like, why would you put? Yeah. And also, I got my start in graphic design, so I do have like an eye for stuff. But I try not to let that sway me. It just says something else.
Yeah.
To me, like, if you didn't. It's like, do your sales presentations also look this bad? You know, it's like.
Yeah, is your coding sloppy?
Yeah,
what's going on? Yeah. Another resource, have you heard of GPTE.ai?
No.
Yeah, so basically it's a site where 1,500 AI platforms, you search in by keyword, and it just lists out all of the AI platforms that match that keyword.
GPTE.ai. Okay.
Yeah. Keep me honest, does it pull up when you...
Yep.
All right, cool. Yeah, because I mean, I can nerd out too on AI and like list out like a million AI tools. But whenever we talk AI on this show, I just put that at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I just want people to really like dive into the different type of solutions that they need. And there's about 5 different AI platforms for everyone.
Yeah, man. Like, that's probably the biggest piece of advice. And you know, I'm just piling on here because I think this narrative is permeated the tech ether, but
Right.
like this, everybody is 10x, has the potential to be 10x more productive. Now it's wild, the stuff that I'm seeing come out since ChatGPT. So it's worth, like, you know, one of the problems being a founder is your attention is needed in so many different places. This is one of those things that's worth, you know, contributing an hour or two a day to just being proficient and learning all these different tools and like really how to apply them to your specific situation. It's like, it's just the impact on productivity. I don't think is like, this is definitely what Andrew Yang was talking about in the 4th Industrial Revolution. The reason why he was running on a platform of universal basic income, because we're very close to being. And so one of the things that I say of why I got into tech investing is I want to build a Star Trek future, not a Star Wars future. Like, we're very close to be able to be in a system where we're so productive that a large percent of the population doesn't need to work. Now, we don't have the economic system to handle that, so now we got to rethink our economic system. Like, we're still operating under the industrial mindset of, you know, jobs equal value. Like, your value and worth as a human is tied to your job and your career, right? So we're going to have to break that down in people's minds of it could be perfectly acceptable to be like everybody is a trust fund baby basically in the future, right? When we get replicators and antimatter energy from antimatter and whatnot, like why does everybody need to work? But anyway, I think we're reaching the level of productivity where, you know, the difference between the lowest performers and the highest performers is going to be like God level.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's good about ChatGPT and why I want our community to really get on it now is there's very low barrier to entry
Right,
to utilize
exactly.
it. But eventually they're going to create stronger ChatGPTs that we're not a part of, in my opinion.
Yeah. Or we're not a part of, you know, building the models, and the models continue to reinforce, you know, biases and whatnot. And like gaps are only gonna. If you think inequality is bad now, what happens when you give people God powers, like that are not equally distributed, because not everybody even has access to the internet or laptops.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
inequality is going to get much worse.
Yeah, that's why, like, when it comes to Microsoft that just, you know, acquired OpenAI, I'm all up in their face, all in the organization, trying to figure out how can we get ChatGPT prompt engineering, you know, into, you know, funded, you know, communities, you know, Black communities, brown communities, et cetera.
Yeah.
Because it's like basically racing a car against a bike. Yeah. You know, the car's always going to beat us to the destination.
It's a Falcon 9 rocket against walking.
Yeah, pretty much, man. And so like that's why it's really important that we talk about it. So I want to turn this into a clip. So why should people invest in prompt engineering and learn ChatGPT?
The short answer is to increase your productivity, like 10x your productivity. You know, a beginner junior coder can be like a senior 20-year experienced software architect, like almost overnight, right?
Yeah.
So there was a whole thing about, you know, coal miners losing their jobs, and they're like, well, if they just learn coding, like, obviously that's stupid. There's a lot of things that need to happen, but it was always just teach everybody coding, teach everybody code. Well, now ChatGPT can code. So the next thing is teach everybody prompt engineering and how to use these co-pilots and these tools. So, you know, if you don't know how to use it, you will not be able to compete. Like, it will be impossible.
No, that's real. That's well said, man. So we talked a little bit about, you know, how founders can find funding. One thing I want to also talk about is how can more people in our community be the funders. So what ideas do you have around that? And yeah, we'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm glad that you asked. So yeah, this is another one of these things that I've gotten decent at condensing, but it's a big problem. So, I mean, it stems from the fact that the Black community specifically has less than 1% of the wealth in the United States, and we're 13 to 15% of the population, right? So we don't have the level of individual concentrated wealth to be able to make an impact as individual investors. We have to collectively pool our resources, which in the past has been wrought with all types of strife and shenanigans, because, you know, systems have been put in place to prevent us from doing these things. But with technology now, it's so easy to start an investment club, to pool money together, crowdfunding campaigns, all that stuff. And the minimum investment, the barriers to entry to invest in illiquid assets like startups, private equity, art, real estate are lower than they've ever been, right? You can get started with minimum investments of like $100. Like the first angel check I wrote, I think was, I don't know, 10 or 15,000, still, which was still small. Then I got in through a syndicate, but now you can do, you know, get in for $100. So the first thing, part of the reason why Black founders get so little funding is not necessarily because of GPs, so like people in my position who are writing checks, it's the people who fund them, right? So the rot in the system is at the LP base. And a lot of the LPs are institutions that, you know, we've not typically been in leadership positions in. So think pension funds, corporate venture, large foundations and family offices and things like that, sovereign wealth funds that we typically not had a seat at the table in these institutions. That's starting to change, but not fast enough. So we don't have access to or personally the individual wealth. We have to start cooperative economics. So we've got to start organizing our existing groups. So we've got fraternities and sororities, we've got professional organizations, we've got community organizations that already bring people together. You know, what we need to do next is just tack on in it another layer of investment, an investment component. So if I'm already paying membership dues, add another $100. And that $100 is not a donation. That is an investment. I will see a return on that investment. But we pull it collectively together. Like, I was pitching this to a lot of the NPHC organizations, so the Black fraternities and sororities, and I had done the calculation for each organization. And it pretty quickly snowballs into a sizable fund. Like, you get, if all NPHC organizations combined participate in this, and with only, I think my assumption was 10 to 20% participation rate, so like 10 to 20% of the members of those organizations actually participating, you quickly get to like $100 million funds within a few years. Like, it snowballs pretty rapidly. And that's not with any compound interest, that's just the invested principal. So collectively, we have enough to get the ball rolling and get into some pretty substantial investments, especially when you think about more athletes and entertainers are starting to get into this space. Because, like, typically a lot of the wealth in our community has been locked up into entertainment, right? So if you think about most of the Black billionaires, they have something to do with entertainment, with the exceptions being people like Robert Smith and Bob Johnson was BET. So yeah, Robert Smith. I can't remember their name. The Roberts brothers. They do real estate in like St. Louis.
Yeah, the other Black billionaires are super low key.
Yeah. Like,
which is smart.
Yeah. I was gonna say one. and I'm hesitant to even. I'm not even gonna say his name because I know he likes to stay low. But
right.
Yeah, he's from my hometown, Louisville. But yeah. So phase one is organize our collective investment capital. Even though it's relatively low, it is in absolute terms pretty large. Like, we spend $1 trillion a year. If we diverted some of that spending into investing, it's not an insignificant amount of money. But then also using our numbers and political power to start getting access to public dollars, right? So, you know, there's minority contractor programs within the government. Most of that money is unspent because we don't have the businesses to actually get access to it. But that's a political thing. So we can force elected officials into making more of those public budgets available. So collectively investing our own personal capital, getting more access to public dollars, all to build our productive capacity and our essentially capacity building, right? So all the Black businesses combined in America make up less than 1% of GDP. Walmart has 16, I can't remember the exact number, so it's many times more in revenue than the top 100 Black-owned companies combined. I think the number is 16 times.
Got it.
So one company, Walmart, has more revenue than the top 100 Black-owned businesses. So we need, like, World War II level effort around increasing the scale of Black-owned businesses. So not necessarily the quantity. Because the problem right now is we got a bunch of small mom and pop businesses that can't scale. We need more businesses we need companies that could create towns around them, like Hershey, Pennsylvania, right? Like, the company is so big and employs so many people, an entire region develops around these companies. Like, this is how we, one, tackle the employment problem. Black unemployment is constantly about twice that of national average. We've got to focus on building capacity, create jobs, and deploy capital, deploy resources. Also, funding more Black fund managers like me to be able to have enough people who know how to evaluate businesses and do portfolio management, portfolio construction, things like that. So all of this is building towards creating the capacity to deploy capital, because the only way to really close this gap is reparations. There's no other solution within any of our lifetimes. I ran the numbers. I'm actually preparing for a speech on reparations now, so I like to tie things to real numbers, because a lot of people talk about the wealth gap but don't actually say the number. Like, it's interesting to me. I was actually at a very fancy dinner with a prominent black investor, and they talked about racial wealth gap, and they talked about entrepreneurship and stuff as a solution, but nobody ever said the number, which is $14 trillion. $14 trillion is the gap we're trying to fill. That's not us getting more college degrees. That's not us being more responsible with our money. That's not having more traditional two-parent households and making all the right decisions, right? It's beyond all that. If we do all of that, let's say, so right now the gap is growing. During the pandemic, the gap grew by $9 trillion, or white wealth grew by $9 trillion during the pandemic. Like, so the gap is not a static thing. And even if they stopped growing and just stopped time and did nothing, it would, and we closed the gap by, let's say, $1 billion a month. That will take 83 years to close. I don't have that kind of time. I'm not trying to wait that long. I want my check now. And if you're wondering, the number is about $350,000 per individual who would qualify for reparations. So I've got a proposal on who should be in that, but I'm not trying to have that debate here or get any of the people who get very upset about these conversations.
Yeah. You don't want to distract from the over.
Yeah. So that's a debate we can have as a community. It is a large contingent, call it minimum 30 million people in America that would qualify.
Yeah.
And it's worth about $350,000 individually. So, like, if you have 4 people in your household, you're talking about $1.4 million. That is not charity that you are owed, that your ancestors worked for, and their labor was stolen, their intellectual property was stolen, their access to public investments and public infrastructure, public socialized everything was stolen. From the Homestead Act to GI Bill, slavery itself, all that stuff. So we are not asking for a handout. We want the debt that is owed, and is the only way to close the gap. It is also good for everybody in America. If you give, like, it would be the biggest stimulus since, like, World War II, probably, and it would eclipse World War II. Like, the activities and the infrastructure we need to build just to even get reparations would be a huge boost to the economy, because it will mean that essentially the least productive people in America, black folks, like, objectively, economically, we are the least productive people.
Yeah.
We would become vastly more productive. Then we're already the source of most of the interesting, like, cultural trend. Like, we set the agenda for America and culture. We just don't capitalize on the value that we create. But unemployment, poverty, things that disproportionately affect the black community are a drag on the entire economy. Solving it for us will help. One, it'll help poverty. It'll help reduce poverty for everybody. It will help boost GDP, like, to a level never seen before. So there is a capitalist argument that it is in their self-interest to do this. That's not why I'm in it. I'm in it because I selfishly want my money that I'm owed.
Yep.
That my great-great-grandfather worked for, and my grandfather and my dad. I want it. I have goals, like we said before. I have a bucket number. The government's holding on some of my money. I want it.
Yep.
And the only entity in the entire planet that is capable of making that happen is the United States federal government. So we have to have a plan for reparations at the federal level. That is the only way to close the gap. Everything else we're doing around wealth building, racial equity is just to build the infrastructure to make that happen. Because if we do all this and don't make that happen, the gap will not close. I already told you the math. It's not possible. We're not going to do it. Definitely not in either one of our lifetimes, and probably not my son's lifetime.
Right. Nah, man, that's deep. So when it comes to how do we get the legislation to actually happen, what do you think?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to preface this. I need as many people to hear this as possible. I'm not suicidal. I don't have any dangerous habits or vices. So if it looks like I committed suicide or any accidents happened to me, I was killed. Before we start talking about no, let me.
Yeah.
No. I'm also not going to take it that far. Look, I'm telling y'all right now, I'm not trying to die for this. I have a plan. I publish as much of this stuff. I have no intellectual property around it. I publish as much of it as possible. So if for some reason I do decide to retire or remove myself from all of this, it's publicly available. So for any government agencies listening, I'm not your problem.
Right.
It's already out there. You can't stop it. So the short answer is there are 22 congressional districts with over 50% black population. You start there. The other part of the short answer is $848 or $868 million. That's how much it costs to buy the Congress, the people in the House and the Senate that we need over the next. I'm giving it 3 Senate election cycles, which are 6 years each, so 18 years. So my reparations plan is 18 years. I think we can beat it, but I'm trying to be a little conservative. And I think we can do it for an investment of $2 billion. So $2 billion to try to get $14 trillion, but say I'm 90%. Remember what I said before. Say I'm 90% wrong, and we only get $1.4 trillion. $2 billion to get $1.4 trillion, not a bad return on investment. I think this is the highest return activity that any of us could be engaged in. So how that breaks down is about half of it is the amount of money it would take to essentially buy the politicians. I don't know a better way to say that. We know they're all for sale.
Enroll them in our vision.
Yes. Yes. Get buy-in from them and yes. Lobby the correct people for the appropriate amount of election cycles. Because the main thing people get caught up is how we're going to pay for it, right? So how you pay for it is, which is why you have to go after federal reparations. The federal government prints the money. We saw that during COVID.
Yep.
Literally, Congress authorizes spending. Somebody at the Fed types in some numbers. Money is created. That's where it comes from. Now, the question is how to do that without making it inflationary, making the price of fucking Louis Vuitton and Maybachs go up.
Right.
That's where the capacity building comes in. So essentially, the process of getting the reparations is the easy part. It just requires organizing our votes in very strategic locations. We don't need 51%. We just need enough to swing votes in the House and the Senate.
Right.
Which in the House right now, I think is like 10 people. 9 people you can make that happen. The Senate, I think, is 1 or 2. So we just need to be able to do essentially like what Mitch McConnell did to Obama, just obstruct. It's like nothing gets passed unless you put this bill on the floor for a vote.
Yep.
We want to see who votes against it. So as soon as we put it on the floor initially for a vote, we know it's going to get voted down, but now we have a list of everybody who voted against it or abstained, everybody who did not positively vote for it. Now we start flooding their districts with money and making their lives very hard. We do that enough times over 3 election cycles. Eventually, we get a bill passed.
Yeah.
That's the easy part. How you operationalize reparations is that budget allocation gets made, and it's not going to be, even if it was $14 trillion, which, I don't know whether we'll get that or not, it wouldn't be immediate. It would, budget cycles are 10 years, so maybe it takes 2 budget cycles. Maybe they break it down over 20 years, 10 years, $1.4 trillion a year, or $700 billion a year. However they break it down, it's not going to come immediately. And my proposal is that, if this is not a new thing, it's not my idea, I am not in favor of just writing everybody checks, which I wish we were in the place to be able to do that, and I would love that to happen because I I think I can invest my money better than any other entity.
Yeah.
But as we determined, we need more capital to create capacity, specifically like manufacturing, service capacity, like more business capacity. So when individuals do get the money, they have a place to spend it without sending it right back out the door, out of the Black community. So the structure would be essentially like a pension fund. So reparations the budget gets authorized, the funds get sent to essentially a pension fund. That pension fund makes investments that are strategically good for the Black community, specifically around capacity building. Some of it goes towards nonprofits to, plug some of the holes that the government is not filling in our communities. And then the returns that we make from those investments, those get distributed. So instead of getting a one-time check, we essentially get quarterly or yearly checks for life.
Right. And then get the ROI and then disperse that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like 95% gets dispersed, another 5%, 5% gets, or 90% gets dispersed, 5% get reinvested, 5% goes to like nonprofit social services or something like that.
Awesome, man.
And we would collectively decide those numbers, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now that actually makes sense. That's the first reparations plan that actually seems feasible.
Yeah.
That I've ever heard.
And then, we have tech. So essentially it would look like a DAO. Like this whole thing is managed with a DAO, from voting and governance to payments, investments, and disbursements.
Yeah. And for those that aren't familiar with the DAO, what does that stand for?
Decentralized Autonomous Organization. So it's a blockchain-enabled way to collectively manage capital. You can also manage voting. So you have blockchain-enabled voting, which we would need because this needs to be super transparent. So we cannot have a situation where anybody could possibly embezzle money from this thing. Because that's
someone's going to want to do it. Yeah.
So it needs to be impossible. And it needs to be super transparent. And then we also need to be able to vote. Like, so do we collectively agree that we're not going to invest in, this is a bad example, but like countries that are sanctioned by the U.S. government, like, or we're not going to invest in fossil fuels or whatever. We'll vote on big things like that, and then there would be a investment committee that would do the more specific day-to-day blocking and tackling, like these fund managers and like balancing portfolio and all that stuff. But it would need to be relatively democratically managed, this whole thing.
Awesome, man. We could talk about this for hours, I know.
Yeah,
but for those that really want to learn more about your plan and the information that you've been putting together, where can they go find it?
Yeah, so right now, the first part of that, building the capacity, is in the book. So intheblack2050.com is where you can get that. Working on a second edition with the reparation-specific stuff, and then I have some blog posts on that website. Maybe somebody transcribes this and puts that out as well. But right now it's just a Word doc. I mean a Google Doc.
Yeah.
So there's nowhere specifically, but the best place to start is intheblack2050.com, and then sign up for the email list on there so you can get more updates. But yeah, that was the verbal plan that I just gave you. So now it exists here.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm glad this is the first place you've been able to verbally put it. You have the clips. Let's distribute it, and let's make this seed grow. So, man, I appreciate you for coming on the show.
Pray for me. This is going to be hard.
I know, man. I got nervous when you said that because I was like, that's just real. You know what I mean? Because that is a very, very feasible plan. But that being said, it's good for the economy. And as long as they understand that it's good for the economy and we're going to be doing it responsibly and not like wreck inflation and all kinds of stuff, then maybe they can get behind it.
Yeah. I mean, the only people who would not agree with this plan are people who are like diehard libertarians who just don't believe in any type of government program that big, and overt racists.
Right.
Like this is in everybody's self-interest to make this happen.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to do it. Especially like I've already quashed the inflation thing. The main thing would be inflation.
Yep.
What do you do about that? And we figured that out.
Inflation, embezzlement, all that jazz.
That stuff for like.
And the blockchain, I love that for that purpose of keeping
and
it.
This is raising the bar for everyone versus, because another common objection would be, if the reason why I haven't mentioned taxes this whole time, like as soon as you mention taxes, it's a wrap. So like the plan is not to raise taxes. So like if it's a redistribution, then like if I'm taxing somebody to give it to somebody else, even whether that's right or wrong, that's a political non-starter. You're not gonna win that battle. So mine is create new money towards new capacity that creates jobs for everybody.
Right.
Because black people are typically not racist. So we will end up employing non-black people when we start these black-owned businesses.
Yep.
We also can't be racist, but anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a whole nother thing for sure. But definitely accurate.
We can be biased.
Awesome, man. So, we're running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you to let the audience know how they can stay in touch with you, and any final thoughts on, the topic, whether it's, what we just talked about, or Techstars, startup founders, whatever final words you want to give, and then let people know how to get in touch with you if, you want them to.
So I'm mostly active on LinkedIn, so it's Tre Baker on LinkedIn. I'll probably be the first thing that pops up. It's TRE with no Y. And then I'm Baker the Third, all words, all written out, lowercase Baker the Third on Twitter. So that's how you can keep in touch. Yeah.
And if black founders want to, pitch to Techstars Tulsa.
Oh, that's pitchtre.com.
Got it.
And then Techstars, well, that's just me in general. And then to pitch Techstars Tulsa specifically, go to techstars.com/accelerators/Tulsa.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
well, appreciate you for coming through, bro.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. And to the audience, I appreciate y'all for coming in and watching the show, listening on whatever audio platform you're listening on. We'd love for you to share this episode, especially if you resonate with that second half. Let's share this information. Let's see how we can make this thing happen. But also to all you startup founders, make sure to re-listen to this, take notes. He really dropped a masterclass on the mentality, the structure, and the way you should pitch your solution, how you should think about solutions. So definitely make sure you re-listen to that part. And there's gonna be a lot of great clips from this episode. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube, download the episodes, like, comment, all that good stuff. Also, I have a passion project called blackhire.com. Basically, like Upwork and Fiverr, that's where you can get freelancers, but it's hard to find black freelancers in particular. So I'm creating a site where if you are looking for freelancers that are black, you can come there, put your roles up there the same way you do on Fiverr and Upwork. And if you're a black freelancer, we'd love for you to highlight your skills so that folks that want to employ you can find you. Also, if you want to connect with me on other social media platforms, you can go to direct.me/Big Tech Energy, where you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all those great places. I have a free ebook, 70 pages, about my path into tech, my advice on breaking into tech, but more importantly, how to have a long, successful career in tech with Resume Guide on LinkedIn, completely free. And then also I have a free community called Tech Careers where I post tech roles, tech resources, tech events, etc., and also like pitch competitions and funding and grants for startup founders. So all the DMs that you guys would send me asking me like where the jobs or where the events are, I put it all in Tech Careers, another free platform. And love for you to continue to watch the show and share with your people. And until next time, this is Big Tech Energy. We'll see you. Peace.
Membership in Black in HR means community and being a part of a culture of like-minded individuals. You have a culture within a culture, especially in the Black community, and Black in HR is that professional culture. We have fun, we laugh and joke about things that are related to us in the workplace, but we also have serious aspects as well where we help each other grow. And it's just one of those places where I can go to any time of the day, pose a question, and I'm going to get all type of answers, but I'm going to get support.
And we all work together to give advice, to give insight, to share tips. The networking is amazing.
The people that I've spoken to have allowed me to learn things about myself that I didn't know. So what does that do? When I go to my next interview, I have that confidence when I walk in to be able to explain and speak on what I've done in the past and prove that I am the person for the job.